Chiara Parodi from Vodafone and Seb Soitingsuk from GSK. Good morning, both of you. Chiara and Seb, how are you doing?
Clive, not too bad, thank you. And you?
Brilliant, very good. Yeah, enjoying it so far. Good morning, Seb.
Hello.
Hi there, how are you?
Morning, everyone.
We're going to just have a bit of a chat about how you see this situation. I suppose just to get things started though, just for those of us who haven't met you, if you could just let us know a little bit about who you are, what you do at your organisation, and then just briefly how you see the current situation and what your perspective is. Chiara, you're from Vodafone. Could you get us started?
Sure. So my role is a service design manager at Vodafone Group. So I work at the group level, and my role is about, and we've mentioned a lot it, so Andrew has mentioned it a lot and Nicolina has mentioned it a lot. My role is basically to support both at group level and all Vodafone opcos in implementing and adopting the service design and design thinking methodology. So basically bringing the customer point of view in the company. So I lead projects by myself and with my team at the group level. I support markets in leading their own projects, and also I support markets with basically training them or case studies or inspirational talks from other companies or design agencies that can help us, innovating, as Andrew and Nicolina were mentioning before, the way we do.
When you say different markets there, you're talking about the different maybe national...
Yeah, exactly. Operating companies in different countries.
Sure.
So Vodafone is a global company. We have dozens of markets, both, let's say, owned by Vodafone or partner markets. We operate mainly in Europe and Central Africa, but we also have like partner markets in New Zealand, Australia, and other fancy places.
Okay, well, look, thanks for joining us, Chiara. And then Seb from GSK. What's your role within GSK and how are things at the moment for you?
Sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Seb Soitingsuk, and yes, I'm aware I do need to go to the barbers. I've been putting that off for a while. It always catches me by surprise how much space it takes up on camera. But I'm the UK pharma web lead at GSK. So we're a big global pharmaceutical company, but I'm based in the UK market. So whereas Chiara is working to support and partner with different markets, my equivalent is working with a number of different brands across our pharmaceutical business. So my title is officially Web Channel Deployment Manager, which is a bit of a mouthful, but in a nutshell, it is essentially to ensure that we're providing customers with value online. So that means partnering with various brand teams across respiratory, oncology, vaccines, make sure that we're providing the right content in the right format at the right time for the right customer, not just once, but in a full experience, and being very cognizant of the full journey that customer will be on, not just instances in time. So I've been at GSK for like the last 5 years now or so, and I started in a web role when I interned. I moved into the content space as I became a social media manager, global content manager, but then came full circle back into the web space as I joined the Accelerator Hub in UK Pharma. Which was a team set up to prove the value of digital in a commercial business, which did phenomenally. And as it delivered its promise, the business went through a bit of a restructuring as my team evolved into the customer experience team, which leads me to where I am today.
Brilliant. Well, look, thanks to you, Seb, also for joining us. I suppose the thing to start with is to say you're both of you in large organisations here. Can you give us some insight into the changes that have gone on for you internally over the last few months? Have your organisations changed the way that they work, communicate, operate from an internal perspective? Chiara, I don't know if you want to go first on that.
Sure. So previously we mentioned Agile with capital A, and so Vodafone had moved into an Agile way of working several years ago, I would say, for not all of our operating companies, but the majority of them, for sure, all big Europeans want. And that has helped us so much now that with the crisis and with COVID-19, we needed to be more flexible in the way that we change things, in the way that we deliver our experiences. So that has helped us so much. And I think that will help us also in moving to an agile organization, also the operating companies that are not yet applying it. I wouldn't have imagined how we could have handled this in a waterfall, for example, organization where things take months to happen. So I haven't seen a big transformation in how we work externally. I have seen a big transformation in how we work, let's say, internally, meaning how we collaborate. I think we've mentioned it also in our, let's say, first catch up, and with the restricted team, how we have changed the way we work. So how we are using different tools, how we are implementing different ways of, collaborating, doing workshop, co-creating. So that is changing dramatically, given the fact that everyone is working from home.
Seb, how about you? How have things at GSK had to adapt or change over recent months?
Yeah, I think GSK or anybody in the pharma sector is probably a little bit more unique than other organisations. So I think most organisations probably had to adapt to use more digital channels just in the ways that they operate as a business. But actually the customers' needs of most organisations as businesses are still probably the same. They still want these products, but they need to be delivered to them in a more remote way. Whereas for us, our customers, the game changed entirely. They're not interested in the things that we typically talk about. Our customers are healthcare professionals who have very different needs to where we were before. So you'd be quite surprised by how little we were prepared for a pandemic. But the first thing we had to do because of that was to set up a COVID team called Project Response. Sounds like something from the Avengers, but it wasn't as cool as it sounds. But it was basically an above brand team to focus on the response to COVID.
When you say above brand there, you mean that rather than the different JSK brands that I may be familiar with, this was an operation that crossed across all these different brands?
Yeah, exactly. And that's, we have strong resources across all the different brand teams who are typically very focused on pushing promotional activity, pushing hard to sell these brands with healthcare professionals. But we don't have very strong above brand resource who looks at things more cohesively across the entire business. So this is what the Project Response team did, because it completely reset the ways of working or what we actually knew about our customers. So this agile team was set up with a bunch of people from across the organization who were doing digital things that they typically wouldn't be doing. And so that in itself was kind of a big change for the business, for people who weren't typically doing these sorts of things now suddenly being chucked into the deep end to learn about this. But I think the key thing for us, which was super important at the start, was having one key decision maker. So we didn't have so many heads butting against each other figuring out what we should do. You just have one person say, actually, well, let's pursue this based on the data we had. But like I said, we had to throw out a lot of the insights that we had about our customers. We're starting from scratch basically because the needs were so different now. So we had to quickly try to gather new insights about customers. And honestly, one of the best ways to do that was simply to use our field force. And it was perhaps a bit more anecdotal than we liked, but we just didn't have many data points at this time which could give us real-time feedback. Apart from search, looking at search was super important for us as a way to help drive what we should be focusing on as a business. And so we suddenly started looking at, okay, what are people searching for at this time? How has it changed? For example, we saw that one of our asthma brands had a huge spike in searches. So we quickly turned around to deliver paid search advertising to position ourselves where customers were looking.
So straight away, you've told us that, things have changed internally, probably quite dramatically in terms of this sort of above brand approach. But importantly, and this I suppose calls back to what we heard earlier, is that was in response to changing customer need. It wasn't just how can we be more agile delivering what we always do. You really have made that effort to hear from the clients, the customers, and hear what they want. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we could also, our leadership was also just talking about saying we have to do more digital, but nobody really knew exactly what this meant at the time or how exactly to do that.
Yeah.
And we're quite a traditional business. We are, pharma is definitely not known for innovation in the tech sector. And telling people we need to do more digital puts people out of their comfort zone. It's a bit of a culture shift.
Right.
And one of the things which I thought was really useful in actually just trying to push this culture shift much more quickly was just to shift the market KPIs that we were all accountable for. So by setting KPIs that were digitally focused, like what are our weighted digital interactions with customers now, how we need to bump that up, capturing email consent, boosting that rate, and actually having everyone in the commercial space focused on these 2 or 3 things, it meant that they're actually dropping everything else that they would do, which wasn't related to these digital activities, and just driving more consents, more digital interactions. And that was quite a quick win in terms of getting people geared up and ready to do more digital at this time.
So there's an illustration of the measurement point that Andrew made earlier. Let's measure this stuff, and you're suggesting different ways to do that. Chiara, if I could just return to you and ask that point about that division we've already identified of being more agile in the way we do things internally and more agile in the way that our customers, more agile in perceiving and understanding what our customers need. What's that meant for Vodafone? Have your customers changed what they ask of you?
That's a very good question, Clive. As Seb was mentioning, the customer needs for us, for example, have remained the same. We've seen, of course, we've witnessed, of course, an e-commerce evolution across all industries, not just ours. And we've seen, of course, numbers doubling because of the fact that we needed to close our stores and our customers were, let's say, forced to move into our digital channels. So therefore, we needed to quickly, assess how we were in terms of capacity and start to measure customer satisfaction, for example, on the digital touch points in more ways than we were used to. We've seen, let's say, we needed, first of all, to understand if we could trust the customer insight that we had during the pandemic. So not just, again, measure and collect insight, but because people are in a different situation, in a crisis, and they are basically, everyone is stuck at home, are they perceiving things in the same way? So we needed to rerun basically some studies, some surveys in order to be sure that we could basically trust their answers. We didn't find many differences in their reactions. Of course, we did find many differences in the products that they were looking at. So a big shift in, of course, people wanting to have a broadband or wanting to have more data because they needed to work from home or the kids needed to study from home. So that has been a big shift. Of course, we have sold less phones. That's obvious because we didn't have any store, and the way people like, at least in the telco environment, we've seen that the way people, for example, buy phones is really tangible. So people still need to go to a physical store to see the phone, how it works, especially, some categories of consumers. Therefore, we've suffered that. We've seen that change. We've seen also that some adopters of digital, let's say, are coming back on digital, even though we are reopening our stores. And that is a very good sign if we think of our KPI is a channel mix, and we need to make sure that the channel mix goes to digital more and more.
You're suggesting there that while things have been very much more online based, and while we've been traveling and shopping less, people have been forced to do their shopping online, forced to make their decisions about buying a new phone, for example, online, and having done that, those habits might stick.
Yes, that is, they will not stick for everyone, for sure. But what we've seen from, talking to customers and partnering with some agencies to conduct some customer research is that partially they will stick. And this will give us, of course, the opportunity to, have more investment, for example, in the digital, even if we are a digital first company, so we already spend a lot of money on digital. So have also more opportunity to build new and better experiences for our customers now that more customers are moving to digital, and we hope they will stick there.
So there's been a few references so far this morning to being really customer centric, to user-focused design, and a few references also to design thinking. Do you think these terms, are they interchangeable? Do they overlap? What's the relationship between design thinking, which we know is a concept that gets presented in inverted commas a bit? It's quite an interesting thing. Is the role of design thinking very much overlapping with the kind of agility ideas that we're talking here?
It's not overlapping. I think it's complementing. They complement each other. There's many of the principles of the agile with capital A, so agile methodology and design thinking. We have a lot of, I say we because I am a service designer, but I think of someone else basically as maybe agile practitioner. Our principles are very similar. Customer centricity is there. I see complementing design thinking and agile complementing each other because agile is about delivering and design thinking is about bringing the customer voice into what we are delivering and how we are delivering it. And I was looking at, there was a question earlier about how it's possible to use an agile delivery methodology, and if it sacrifices for example, user research. This is what I am doing now. This is where I'm putting the majority of my effort at the moment in working together with the agile squads, for example, the tribes, in order to embed the design thinking methodology in the way they work. It's possible to do it. Of course, as Andrew was saying, I mean, I took a lot of notes about your talk on what you were saying, Andrew, because I really think that you need to find the right people to work with at the beginning. You need to find, for example, product owners that are open-minded and embrace the design thinking methodology, and they really believe in customer centricity, and make them ambassadors of what you do. And then it seems difficult, but then after you found, quick wins and ambassadors, then it becomes very easy to progress towards a full, let's say, company using it. We are not yet there, but we are working hard to go there, and I think we are in a good way.
That's really helpful, Chiara. That the way you described those two philosophies being adjacent, complementing each other without overlapping. Seb, can I ask you something? We've had a little bit of a reference earlier to the idea of sort of accelerator hubs, incubators, those sort of units within a large organisation that can really be seen to drive innovation. And we've sort of seen some question marks over whether or not that's the best approach for everyone. Am I right in thinking you've been involved with the idea of accelerator hubs within GSK?
Yeah, so I was involved in the UK Accelerator Hub, and actually we've got a fellow Accelerator Hub member on the call there, Amish Patel, actually. So hello there, mate. But the Accelerator Hub, I think it really, the principle of a digital acceleration team was integral for us getting into the position that we are today. Pharma, as I said before, is really behind the curve on a lot of things in the digital space. And we weren't able to deliver on anything digital unless we had a core team with the right kind of mindsets, with the right kind of support. And it had to come from top down. We needed to have buy-in from senior leadership to make this happen, because this digital team needs to have the authority and the kind of mandate to be able to drive an actual change, which means that stakeholders in the rest of the business have to listen to you. So the way that the team is introduced is super important to how it actually lands across the business. And this Accelerator Hub, it taught the business how to be more agile in a genuine agile way. I think typically, like Grant's concerns earlier around how agile can sometimes be a way to just basically, I mean, what we've seen is it's a way for some of our leaders to say, I want to push this idea out there. I don't know why I'm doing it, but I just think it's a good idea. And they use agile, they label it as agile as a way to get away with it. And that's obviously not going to work. And I think what the Accelerator Hub did was just bring a bit more common sense to that, to bring in some of that design thinking, to make sure that actually you need to have some kind of hypothesis up front. You can't just do things on a whim. But the key to making agile work, and what made the Accelerator Hub work so well, and I think this goes across anyone who's trying to be more agile, is that skill set to be able to determine what you can get rid of in order to make something work. Being able to see that actually I've got enough insight here to show that this isn't going to be a complete failure, and I know what elements I can strip out to make this a quick delivery, so I can start gaining insights as to how to iterate from this going forwards. And I think it is that skill set of being able to figure out what you can strip out and what you can start with, which is super important to making something like that work.
Now, how about that tricky question of scaling then? There was a suggestion earlier from Nicolina saying Accelerator Hubs, sometimes there's a drawback in terms of getting that then to scale to make meaningful change across the business. What's your take on that?
I think it has to start somewhere, to be honest. We were this, and it's actually, when I was saying about how you sell this kind of team into the business, that's being super important. It's making sure that when you start off, you have this digital team, but they don't become this black box in the corner of the organization. It's far too easy to have. Digital can sometimes be seen as this cool thing that these people are in the corner doing, some IT wizardry stuff. We don't really know how digital marketing works, but let's let them get on with it. So making sure that you've got your digital team constantly communicating with your senior stakeholders across the rest of the organization, even if it's just purely a one-way dialogue for now, just to be like, this is what we're doing, this is how it works, this is the impact we're making, and constantly feeding to them that digital is not something that we should just be doing in a pocket of the organization. Because what happened then off the back of the Accelerator Hub, we were set up to prove the value of digital in a commercial business, and it achieved on that front. We got research back for the first time ever showing a tangible link between digital activity and commercial return, actual sales. And then what happened off the back of that is the hub kind of evolved to kind of disperse members of the Accelerator Hub into the rest of the organization and build more digital roles, so more digital content manager roles, more digital brand manager roles that were being placed into core commercial teams now. Then what happened is the Accelerator Hub evolved into my team, which is the customer experience team, and we act more as a a center of excellence. But we now have digital roles embedded in every one of these teams, which is the first step to just industrializing digital and scaling it out across the organization. But I think we wouldn't have been able to get to that stage unless we had actually proved the value of digital first in a small space.
You're saying there is a risk of black boxing digital, of treating it like its own special world. And to avoid that risk, yeah, by all means get it started as an incubator, but then make the efforts to help those skills and those learnings branch out into the rest of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about, I think one of the mentalities we had was to partner and not to support. When you say that you're a support or you're a service to your brand teams or your markets, it can easily be seen as, okay, we're the guys who just do what you tell us to do. And actually, when we position ourselves as partners, we're saying that we've got the exact same intentions as you. We want to help you do your job, and your job is our job. And by partnering, just that mentality alone made a big difference to seeing that actually we are all moving in the same direction. Digital is part of the business now. It's not a separate entity.
So does that mean that given time, the role of Accelerator Hubs or other similar sort of structures as a model will become redundant, that won't be needed the further along this journey we go?
I suspect, in an ideal world, but then again, I feel like there's always going to be space for innovation. And I think that some sort of accelerator hub will always appear. We're just, our kinds of accelerator hubs right now are fairly immature digitally. It's just about showing that digital activity makes an impact for your business. Sure. But once that becomes a new norm, you're going to have new channels, new ways of delivering business through new sorts of digital means, which are going to be new and unfamiliar for lots of people. So I think that model is always going to have to be there. You're still going to always need somebody to show the value of it in a small space, focus on getting it right somewhere, and then look at scaling it out. So I don't think it's going to make the model redundant.
Okay, Chiara, do you have any thoughts on this? The idea of accelerator hubs or other sort of incubator type structures and how they help a large organization innovate?
I think that we have moved from having incubators to having, let's say, innovation distributed in the company. There is still an incubator for our mainly enterprise products. but it's very open. So it means that there is a structure, there is an incubator structure, but it's really participative. So basically people can contribute to that incubator from different teams. So you can volunteer, you can go there, you can just put your idea, and then of course it gets researched and then it gets validated. And the incubator basically provides the expertise of how the innovation should be done, let's say, and the company, so everyone, a single person or teams can bring basically the energy for innovation.
So rather than the incubator being, this is where innovation happens, it's just, this is where we help you innovate in your department, in your function, in your market. Okay. Actually, while we're talking about markets, could I ask you something else, Chiara? You know, both of you, something you have in common, Seb and Chiara, you're both working at group level. And Seb, in your cases, you've got the different brands. In Chiara, you've got the different markets. Chiara, when you're working in that sort of way, do you find that some of the markets are more or less accepting or resistant? Do you have challenges in terms of trying to get the benefits of this way of working accepted across the whole group?
Definitely yes. So the level of maturity of our operating companies is really different. We have big advanced markets, small advanced markets, and also, you know, markets that are a bit behind. It can depend on many factors or reasons. It can depend on budget. It can depend on the fact that, for example, Spain, they have had a huge competition, so they had to basically reorganize the company, and they had to unfortunately reduce the number of employees. So some professions are not available in Spain at the moment. So that makes it a bit more difficult, for example, for us to deal with them and to help them. That is one of the main challenges that we have, to find a way to help everyone, let's say, the same way, so not to have preference, because each market counts, but find the right way of helping different markets. For example, we provide design thinking training. Some markets need design thinking training. So we've been to South Africa in January. We've trained like 45 people. So it could not be possible in markets like, for example, Italy or Germany, where they have their own design teams. They are very experienced, so they don't need us to train them. But for example, they could need us to be partners, as Seb was saying. So they could need our point of view on something. They could need someone external to help them in solving some challenges or being accepted, or the methodology to be adopted. So this is the challenge that I have in dealing with all markets.
You're making a case there for being flexible, being agile with your agility, not just deciding we're doing agility and everyone's doing it, is recognizing that your different brands, your different colleagues, your different departments, different markets, that their needs will be different, and you remain agile in the way you help them. Definitely.
And also one of my main roles is to basically put them all together, so let them know each other, because I can't be the bottleneck. My team can't be the bottleneck. If a market has a specific need, it's very useful for them to get in touch with all the other opcos and to find the right partner. So it could be that, for example, at the moment, Vodafone UK and Vodafone Turkey are partnering on the remote research tool. So they're working together on the same tool. They are exchanging insights on how to use things, because in this moment, they have a similar need.
Sure.
So this is also my role. It's not that I know everything and I can help them with everything. I'm not. I can help them connecting or benefiting from best practices and whatever they have learned.
Seb, is this something you found, that with the different brands you work with, there's different levels of maturity, acceptance, readiness to take on new ways of working?
Yeah, definitely. Some of our brands are years ahead of some of our other brands who are just not, who didn't have the digital roles in there before, or just haven't been focused on being a bit more agile generally. We as a market and well as an industry, we've got such a heavy and like sluggish content and experience development process because we're such a heavily regulated industry. You have rounds of reviews. The content production process can be quite slow as well, but just going through medical review, legal review for what you need to, going through iterations of reviews just makes it quite tough for us. So a lot of what I've got to do is just focus on how to streamline a lot of these processes, how to make things like A/B testing actually a much easier thing than people imagine. You know, for example, super practically, let's get all of our A/B test ideas approved up front, so we do it in one go, and then we've got the next 6 months to deploy them when we like, rather than approving one idea at a time and having to do multiple reviews. So just simple things around just making the processes internally much more fluid is super important here.
Right.
I think one of the other issues though is that I think it can be quite, it's not so tangible for a lot of people as well. When we look at design thinking, A/B testing, automated campaigns, things like that, it's not so clear. You can talk about it as a concept, which makes a lot of sense, but when putting into practice, I think that's where we see a lot of brands stumble. Right. What we did this week with our COPD brand Trilogy was do a market-wide session to look at how they did a data-driven marketing campaign automation campaign from start to finish, how we delivered 5 times the conversion rates, open rates, click-through rates, and just show them practically exactly every step, how we segmented our data, how you can do the exact same for your brand, how we created content off the back of that, and how easy it is actually to make these automated flows for your campaigns, and just bringing it to life, making it less of a concept and more practical, and giving people those examples is what makes it much more tangible. And at the end of the session, we'd have brands saying, "Thank you for this. This was so helpful because I just didn't know where to begin." And seeing it in practice is going to make the difference here. Once you can make it tangible, I think that's when it will really start to help to drive this change.
Recognise that different colleagues will have different needs, and being flexible and ready to serve what they need. Yeah, your customers in a way. Yeah. I've got a couple more questions for Chiara and Seb, but there is still time. If you want to pitch a question to them, tap it in the chat window there, and we can put in our last few minutes there. We can present a question to them. In fact, as I speak, Nicolina, who we met earlier, Nicolina, you have a question there that you've proposed. Do you want to place that to them?
Yeah, because Sebastian, that was quite interesting. I think both in telcos and financial services and pharma, obviously we have strong regulation, so that kind of puts a lot of constraints on what you can actually test and what you can even pilot. So how do you overcome those obstacles? And I know in the Vodafone Group you don't even have that data because that's owned by the markets. So how do you overcome that to actually make it real and prove that point for to actually utilize it and then secure the budgets actually to move to the scale?
Yeah, we've got to have, it's all about your approvers, their mindsets, to be honest. So what made the Accelerator Hub work so well is that we had, so medical is what was probably the biggest part of the approval process. We always have to have medical compliance reviews on everything that we do, any promotional content. And our medic was digitally savvy. She was well in tune. She sat with us. Typically, you have your content creators and your approvers as separate teams. And by having your medics, your approvers, whoever they are, your regulation advisors, sitting with your content creators right next to each other, so actually you could just bounce ideas off each other at the same time, rather than having your brand teams create content, goes over to approvers, they have to mull it over, then come back, and it's not the most practical, collaborative way of working. But really, I think it was that having more digitally savvy approvers who are willing to push the boat out there a bit, try new things, and not be afraid of just trying something different because it hasn't been done before, was really what made it work for us.
Okay. Chiara, any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, Seb has mentioned the fact of working together, meaning co-designing. I think that this is something that we are doing a lot, and this is helping us overcoming the obstacles also of the regulations and of the technology. So we are co-designing with operating companies, meaning that, for example, our website and our app, My Vodafone app, are designed at the group level, but they are designed together with markets. So we have designers, for example, or product owners from markets coming together with us in person when it was possible, now of course remotely, and we work together. They have the expertise to help us designing something that works for example, the regulations, and also a huge contribution from technology. Also technology, they are working in a co-creation way. So they are basically co-developing what we design. And this is helping us having the, let's say, the knowledge that we need to build at a group level, and also to design something that is actually, for example, technically feasible when it is deployed in the markets.
Okay. Seb and Chiara, we're moving towards the end of our time together, but just to wrap up, I do have one more question I'd like to ask you. I'm going to just remember that a lot of the people here on this call are coming from different businesses, they're in different positions, and that level of different levels of maturity and sort of readiness for these sort of changes and this sort of agility is going to vary. If you had one tip for people who are thinking, my business is about to go through a great change as we emerge from this time into the next era, and I need to know one tip, one thing I should take away from this call to help my business to adapt, to stay agile, to make a better future, what would your one tip be? Seb, I'll ask you first.
What's always the trouble with getting people to collaborate in a new change, and I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to reiterate that point, is all about the metric, the KPI that everyone's working towards. If you don't set an aligned goal across all of your brands, if there isn't one consistent goal or KPI, you have people moving in separate directions. That's going to cause tension. And just making sure that your business is setting up one KPI that's relevant to all of your brand teams, your content creators, your engineering teams. Having them all work to one goal is going to be the way to make sure that people actually start partnering together rather than working in different directions. It sounds like common sense, but it's honestly happens constantly, time and time again.
Sure. Okay, thanks for that. Chiara?
Yeah, my point of view would be, I mean, we've touched this point many times today, would be around customer centricity. So especially when you need to transform yourself during a crisis and after a crisis, you can't really spend money in building things that no one would buy or building things that no one will be able to use. So be truly customer centric. Mm-hmm. Because be customer centric as a buzzword is something, but be truly customer centric is a transformation that every company needs to do in order to be successful and to mainly survive after or during the pandemic. Definitely.
Thank you so much for that. With that brilliant point, we're going to wrap up this little section here. But that thing you finished with there, Chiara, it just seems to, we come back to it time and time again at DLF, don't we? That idea that talking about customer centricity, it is an easy word to say. We use it a lot, but really actually living and breathing that, being willing to throw away what you previously think, throw away your previous assumptions, throw away what you think you need to do as a business, and really listen to what your customers need out of you. That does sound like a fundamental tip to go away with.